spent in a miserable way.
U.S. News Opinion: How Republicans Erased Trumpism. The New York Times. GOP congressional leaders used tactics to minimize the president's influence and maximize their own control over public policy. By Matthew Glassman. Mr. Glassman is a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown. Donald Trump has a Congress problem. He can't get but most Americans that know that. After all, but discerning legislative influence is. Throughout the first, critically, congressional Republicans have adopted strategies that make the public view and, more important, his conservative base who think Mr. Trump is in command. To casual follow, in his Presidential Power and the Modern President, the political scientist Richard Hustad argued that presidential power is the power to persuade. Strong presidents. Mr. Hustad identified a second resource that aids in presidential persuasion: public prestige. Political actors. On this dimension, Mr. Trump appears to be stronger. His is very poor. Nevertheless, congressional Republicans have found a solution to this challenge: agenda setting. Political power is. Throughout the last Congress, Republican leaders that reflected the priority of the president but not their own. There were no votes on the Trump budget proposals for the 2017 and 2018 fiscal years requested deep cuts in non-defense discretionary spending. Congressional such negative agenda setting leaves little trace. Without a vote, agenda setting also provides congressional leaders positive power to set legislative priorities. Mr. Trump has, by setting the agenda, and Republican legislators controlled policy while sharing the position of the president. When Republicans, this trade-off, in which orthodox Republicans get policy control and Mr. Trump gets the glory, is also apparent in the nominations of judges and executive branch officials. The president by privately influencing Mr. Trump to nominate people who reflect Republican priorities, congressional leaders not only win substantively, but the president gets to show off a perfect record of confirmations on the Senate floor, and for his nominees. Despite this, Mr. Trump has had rejected by the Senate, many of whom were from congressional leaders. But this, too, the logic of agenda setting also explains the reticence of congressional Republicans to conduct meaningful oversight of Mr. Trump or his administration. Full-scale legitimate, negative and positive agenda setting served the Republican policy agenda well during the first 2 years of the Trump administration. In December, given the power of the veto as a presidential tool of negative agenda setting, but to allow Mr. Trump to take control of the border wall negotiations. Congressional leaders, however, continued to use subtle agenda-setting tactics. The majority lead. These tactics yielded impressive results. While for the past, now that Democrats control the House, Republican leaders may find it more difficult to limit the president's legislative role. Mr. Trump will be disposed poorly for legislative prospects in the new Congress. In our current part, Matthew Glassman at Matt Glassman 312 is a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown. Follow the New York Times opinion section on, and
raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.